If you're a home bartender and you're wondering if you should serve canned or bottled pre-made cocktails at your next party, then this is the correct video for you. My name is Ron Virpin. I'm a full-time medical doctor and I've been a home bartender for over 5 years now. During that time, I learned how to make over 100 different cocktails and I've thrown over 50 cocktail parties. And now I teach other busy professionals how to make cocktails at home. And for me personally, I got into home bartending at a very interesting time. I started home bartending in June 2020. And all of you by now know that 2020 was the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic. And it was famous for lockdowns and bars closing. And people had to find alternative ways to enjoy cocktails since they couldn't go out to their favorite bar to have cocktails. So since 2020, there has been really an explosion in the number of pre-made and pre-batched bottled and canned cocktails. They were already in existence even before that. I had some even in 2018, 2019, but they really took off in popularity after 2020. And now they're essentially ubiquitous. You walk into any liquor store, and depending on what part of the world or what part of the US you live in, even in some grocery stores, you can find them. They're pretty available, pretty accessible. And a lot of people that aren't really that into cocktail culture and mixology, they find these very enjoyable. And even myself, who is an advanced home bartender, I still find these cocktails to be quite enjoyable. So therefore, it's a very important question that you're probably having if you're wondering, if you're wanting to throw your next party or you're wanting to host a few people over, like a few friends, coworkers, or family members, things like that. Should you serve pre-made, bottled, or canned cocktails? Because they are so popular. Your guests have probably had them. There's a lot of good brands and companies making them these days. Should you serve them? And me personally, I mentioned at the start of this video, I've thrown over 50 cocktail parties, and I don't believe I've ever served them at any of my cocktail parties. I say I don't believe because I personally have never served them, but people oftentimes bring alcohol to my parties as well. And there may have been some times when somebody brought a pre-made or canned cocktail and somebody had that, but I personally have never served those. And there's a couple of reasons for that. For me personally, and this is true not just to cocktails, but to most things in life, when you do the more intentional way that takes more time and more effort, that's usually when you get better quality. For example, an old fashioned that you make on your own, you go out and you buy the whiskey and you get the sugar cube and you get the Angostura bitters and you go through that whole technique. You muddle the sugar cube, put the Angostura bitters in the glass, put your whiskey in there, you put your giant block of ice that you made ahead of time, and then you go ahead and you stir it down to temperature. You go through that whole technique and that whole process of making that old fashioned. That's always going to be better, especially if you use high quality ingredients, you use the right technique, and you do everything correctly. That's always going to beat a pre-made or canned cocktail. Uh, and even though those may be good, and oftentimes a lot of them are, like I said, I've tried a lot of them, it's just not going to be the same as when you go through the actual effort of making the cocktail on your own. And if you're like me, you're really passionate about home bartending, you're passionate about mixology, and you really care about making high quality drinks at home. And you really take pride on the fact that you can make better drinks than any of these companies that work on making the pre-made canned and bottled cocktails. So it's really a source of pride because you want to be able to say that you make better drinks than that company that made the bottled or the canned cocktail. So that's one of the main reasons I didn't want to serve those. And the other thing is because this is one of my main hobbies. I would say it's probably my main hobby by this point. And I love making drinks. And if you're like myself and you really care about home bartending, then you also love making drinks. So you can't just go out and buy canned cocktails because then your guests, when they come over to your apartment or your house, they're going to be just having that, and you're not going to be able to have the pleasure and the enjoyment of making drinks for other people. Because for me personally, and if you're like that as well, that's really what brings you so much joy as a home bartender, when you get to make a cocktail and not only make it, but you get to serve it to somebody that you really care about, whether that's your family member, your partner, your friend, even your coworker, or somebody that you're just meeting for the first time that you want to become friends with, something like that. It's really such an important thing to do, to be able to, such a great thing to do, I should say, to be able to make a drink for them and serve that drink for them, and then they enjoy that drink. And when you just go out and buy a canned or bottled cocktail, then you really lose out on that, because then that's just you serving somebody else's product to them. Whereas if you go out and make the cocktail on your own, then you get to say that you served something that you made to somebody else. And for me, those are really the reasons I don't personally like to serve canned or bottled cocktails at my parties, because I take a lot of pride and joy in making the cocktail myself and being able to serve that to other people, and other people being able to say that they enjoyed something that I made as opposed to something that I just bought at the store. So that's really the reasons I personally don't do that. And if you're like myself and you care so much about home bartending, you really want to get into mixology, and you want to make this a big part of your life, a major hobby, then you are going to be the exact same way, and you're not going to. That's why I think that if you're like that, you shouldn't go out and buy canned or bottled cocktails. Now, do they have a place? Of course. For example, if you're going to somebody else, if somebody else is hosting a party and it's not you're going to be your home bar and they're serving cocktails, I don't think you should go to that house and say, oh, you should have just made old fashions and daiquiris on your own. You shouldn't be buying this garbage, because that's somebody else's place. Maybe they're not into home bartending, or they don't care as much for home bartending. They just want to host their friends over because everybody loves hosting their friends over, and they want to have quality drinks there. And for them, that's just easier and more convenient, and they're not as passionate or as into home bartending because not everyone is like myself or you all that are watching this. Not everyone is as into mixology and home bartending, but everyone still likes to serve their guests when they host parties. So they're going to be having those pre-made cocktails. So there still is a time and place for those things. But if you're like myself, you really care so much about home bartending and you really want to make this a big part of your life, I would say skip buying when you host your next party. Don't buy pre-made canned or bottled cocktails. Focus on building quality cocktails from scratch using the techniques and the methods that I teach on this channel and that other bartenders teach on YouTube as well, or techniques that you can learn from blogs and from books and other resources and things like that. So anyway, that's just those are my thoughts on the whole use of canned cocktails. Yes, they do have a place, but if you're really into home bartending, then you shouldn't serve them at your own parties. Just my opinion. But anyways, if you found that advice helpful, or you got some great takeaways from this video, please subscribe to the channel. I really like to do two types of videos on this channel. One will be like this video where I share stories from my own home bartending journey and give general tips, tricks, and advice on home bartending that I feel will make you guys all better home bartenders. And the second style of video will be tutorials on how to make specific drinks. That's all I have for today. Thank you. Cheers.